Well, good evening and welcome to PM Express, live from our studio here in Accra. We're live on DSTV channel 421 and GoTV channel 125. With exactly 110 days to December 7, 2024, which is the election day, political parties are vigorously campaigning for your mandate to govern and, in their words, quote, to lead the development agenda of this country. They are selling what they have in stock for you to help you make that decision. Now, yesterday in Takoradi, the NPP's flag bearer, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, presented his vision for the country in what the party together has agreed as their manifesto, for which you have to look on and agree that your vote is for the party or not. It was presented in Takoradi, and we break it down for you with the vice chair of the Manifesto Committee, Kojo Ponkroma, joining me live here to help us make sense of the skeleton we saw that was presented to us in Takoradi. But let's try and run you through what we do know of this particular manifesto. Now, what we have gathered from this document, we've counted at least 380 promises in this manifesto. We'll try and get more flesh on these for you. But let's try and do some comparison between what the party told us or promised us in 2020 and what they are promising us for 2024. Now, in 2020, we counted at least 223 promises made by the NPP government or the NPP party. They were seeking for a renewal of term to do a second term for President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. We go into 2024 with a new man with a new vision. And we've counted at least 380 promises that he's made to the people of Ghana. So from the manifesto yesterday, that is what we counted. But let's try and look at some similarities between the 2020 manifesto and that of the 2024. Now, in 2020, the NPP government said they will consolidate free SHS and TVET programs. That was when they had begun the free SHS, and lot of children, lot of SHS students were getting opportunity, to being educated, going through the cycle for free. And they had also implemented several TVET programs, and they said they would do that. What are they promising us this time? This time, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia says he will continue and improve on the free SHS that they have implemented. Again, he says they will establish a national open university. And some years ago, when I was in the University of Cape Coast, I heard this being championed by the College of Distance Education. The flag bearer of the NPP says now we want to have an open university. There's more that we would have to have on this one. And I'm sure the vice chair for the committee would help us understand. But again, in 2020, they said they would develop the Pualugu multi-purpose dam. That's what they promised us. Now, they also said they will reduce the high cost of data in Ghana. But what are they promising us this year? The party says they will implement the Pualugu irrigation scheme. How different is that from the dam? We'll try and get some answers. And again, progressive reduction in the cost of data. Some young people have been complaining on social media that the cost of data is too huge. So the party says we'll look at, progressively reducing the cost of data for you. Now, let's look at the major commitment, what the party led by Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia says it will do for you if you give them your mandate. One, and this has already been spoken about, but we will probably get more details today. The National Credit Scoring System, where the score you have could help you get a certain kind of credit. Now, they also harmonize the port charges, and they've likened it to the Lome port. Let's see how it goes. Additional holiday for Eid al-Adha. You know that discussion, right? An MP has even moved that there should be a legislation to have a day for them. The flag bearer says, well, we will do that. We'll give them additional holiday for Eid al-Adha. Again, this thing will not go away. Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia again says the Cape Coast Airport construction will come off. We'll get more on that. And also protect the Ghanaian cultural and family values. And we'll be talking about this on Top Story today. We'll get more answers from the vice chair when he joins. Again, free tertiary scholarship for PWDs. The party said, we've heard that, our major opponents say they will do this for level 100, but they say they want to do a targeted one for persons with disabilities. Again, they want to cap ministers at 50, and people have hailed this. But how doable is it? We'll get to know. And they would elect MMDCs. You remember the issue about President Akufo-Addo wanting to make MMDCs electable, that you elect for who will become an MMDC. That didn't happen, but his vice, who is not a flag bearer, says, I'll take it up and ensure that is done. Again, they reform ex gratia and review single spine salary structure. These are the commitment that Dr. Bawumia and his government are giving you. Now, let's look at expenditure. When Dr. Bawumia says, I'll reduce government to 50, what in terms of money will we see? Now, average monthly salary for the current ministers is 30,202, and that's from the emolument committee. If Dr. Bawumia says, I'm going to do 50 ministers, what we are doing currently is 85 by that will give you 30.8 million. But if he says he's going to do 50, we're going to then be spending 18.1 million, a reduction of 12.7 million cedis for you if that is done. And that's why a lot of people say this is good. If we're able to do it, we'll save a lot of money. But can we? I mean, we'll get more when we are joined by the vice chair. Again, Dr. Bawumia says, I'll look at the taxation regime in this country. I think that there's a lot more we need to do in that area to increase productivity and bring in more people. He says he will therefore implement flat tax rate. What really does that mean? I've had the Estonia example. Today, we'll get more education on that. Also, there will be tax amnesty for all of us. Let's start afresh. You know, that will be done. We'll get more explanation. VAT reform, abolish betting tax, abolish e-levy, remove duties on mobile phones. You know, so all of this is what the party is promising you, that if you give them your mandate, they will do for you. Now, in terms of debt that people owe GRA through taxes, 5.3 billion cedis. So if Dr. Bawumia says I would abolish some of these taxes, what revenue is going to go off our books? Now, 5.1 billion betting tax. If we remove the betting tax alone, Ghana will lose 5.1 billion Ghana cedis. How does the government intend to rake that in? Again, e-levy between 2025 and 2027 is expected to generate 8.27. If that is done away with, we are losing that whole amount, 8.27. Let's see how that goes. Now, he says that when it comes to infrastructure, for example, the private sector should be allowed to play in. So Dr. Bawumia yesterday said he'll redirect 3% of GDP to private sector for them to play within. So government, instead of spending 30 billion cedis in this, government says, I'll keep this money and rather allow the private sector to play within. But what will happen to the money? We'll get answers. Establish Fiscal Responsibility Council, expand gold for oil. You know how this program has been talked about. He says he will expand it and strengthen private sector partnerships. So it looks like the focus is on private partnership. But let's look at it. He says I'll focus on job creation. What would that mean? That would mean that people's purchasing power will be boosted. That will bring about rising demand because we have money to spend. So there will be demand, which means that, I mean, higher government revenue. The more we buy, companies will pay more, government will get more money. And then he says this will be backed by a favorable tax regime, which of course will boost your purchasing power. So tonight, I sat with Kojo Ponkrumah, who is the vice chair for the committee, to help us make sense of this skeleton. You might stay with me for us to go through this process so that you can make your decision based on what you hear tonight. This is on PM Express. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, I sit down with Kojo Ponkrumah. Do stay with us. All right, so welcome back. Let's sit down now and have the conversation. But let me remind you that this is sponsored by Syntex Tanks. It is strong, it is tough, Syntex Tank. No matter your water needs, Syntex Tank has it all. Syntex Tank is first to introduce the double layer tank, and now you can have as many layers as you want. Tell us what, and we'll produce it for you. Syntex Tank is first to introduce white inner layer tanks in Ghana. We now introduce to you the customer specs order, which lets you order any color and size of preference. Syntex Tank gives you the longest warranty of 7 years, which no other tank gives you in Ghana. So whatever your water consumption, size of project or demand, choose Syntex Tank. We have agents nationwide. Call Syntex on 0244 335 168 or shop online at syntexgh.com. Syntex, air strong, air tough. Now let me welcome Kojo Ponkrumah, who is Vice Chair of the NPP 2024 Manifesto Committee. Kojo, I hope you're well.
I'm well. I hope you're good too.
Yeah, I'm good. Nice to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, in 2016, the NPP's free SHS, was a standout policy for the party. Now, recently, the NDC's Youth Manifesto brought out the attention to its promise for free tertiary education. So what is the key policy in the manifesto you launched yesterday that people should remember that this is what we promised Ghanaians?
Ojo, thank you, and good evening to your viewers. And in 2016, yes, the free senior high school promise gained a lot of attention, not necessarily because we thought it was the most important policy, but it was because it was strongly opposed by the NDC at the time, and they sought to create an impression that it was something that was impossible to execute. And it therefore ignited a very strong debate about the policy, and as Ghanaians listened and watched the adverts that they sponsored on TV, etc., against it, Ghanaians came to the view that it was a very strong policy. In this manifesto, you'll find about 14 major issues that we have highlighted.
Okay.
For example, expanding the Ghanaian economy, creating jobs, tax reforms, building a world-class digital economy, reducing the cost of living. Today, when you talk to many people, one of the things that are outstanding that they want to see the government work on is a reduction in the cost of living. Expansion in infrastructure, healthcare for all, implementing affirmative action for women and girls, and a few others. I think for many people, this election is about different things. And so if you speak to the young persons, what stands out for them is our jobs commitment. If you speak to the business community, what stands out for them is the expansion and the rebounding of the Ghanaian economy. If you speak to those who are interested, for example, in the environment, they find our propositions on that pretty exciting. So this manifesto, I don't think will be like any of the manifestos in the past. Our democracy is changing and it's going forward, but it provides various things to various people. And it is in that space that people will respond to various parts of it.
So there is no theme that must stand out, like what the free
The
just
theme
did.
that you will find is selfless leadership, bold solutions for jobs and businesses. And if you're looking for an overarching canopy under which this manifesto sits, it's essentially about bold solutions to the myriad of challenges that are on the horizon. And the point we're making is that in this election, we're choosing between two people, John Dramani Mahama and Mahamudu Bawumia. And between these two people, we're looking out for who has bold solutions to the many problems. So this election is not a single issue election. It's an election that covers multiple issues. In fact, if you listen to Dr. Bawumia when he spoke yesterday, he said the top 3 issues were the economy, jobs, and infrastructure. And in addition to those top 3 issues, there are about 11 other top issues that we have nominated and proposed answers to. And as I'm suggesting to you, this election is not a single issue election. This election is one in which people are looking for leadership that solves the multiplicity of issues that are going on around us.
So I'm happy you mentioned jobs because, in fact, people, talk about joblessness. People talk about unemployment in this country. Now, in 2016, 2020, your party promised, and in fact, you implemented a NAPCO program. A significant number of young people were employed. But as we know, over time, the government was overwhelmed. And we all know the state of NAPCO today. In 2024 manifesto, your government is promising to create 1 million jobs for the youth of Ghana in various sectors of the economy. How different will this be from NAPCO, from the NEIP we do have already, and some of the programs you have that target young people and job creation? So
in 2016, our entire manifesto was themed Change, an Agenda for Jobs. The Ghanaian population is very young. Over 60% of our population are very young people, very fertile people. And therefore, as a lot of them graduate out of school, you would, for a period, find that jobs will be one of the recurring themes. Between 2016 and now, a lot has been done in the area of job creation. If you look at the public sector jobs that have been created, and you compare to the private sector expansion and the jobs it's created, SNIT records that at least 2.3 million jobs have been created within this period. Now, it is on top of that we're saying... The 2.4, where are they? So the 2.3 million jobs, it's a whole retinue, first in the public sector. I mean, you are pretty familiar with those who've been recruited into security services, into the civil service, into teaching, into nursing, into several areas. And then also in the private sector. Because, for economies, what happens is that as the economy grows and expands, as multimedia grows and expands from Hits FM to Adom FM to all of these, and you're building new studios here, you recruit more people. So one of the rules of thumb is that when you see the economy growing, it stands to reason that you see jobs in there. Today, when you go to the SNID database, that is where you see the recording of those who are in the public sector, those who are in the private sector. A lot of things that we have done over the period have created jobs. And I'll give you a few examples. When we introduce something like Zipline, you will find human beings who are working there. When we introduce something like digitization, and as we were explaining yesterday, digitization is not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. You will find that a lot of jobs are being created because of that. People can sit home, do business. They can get people to pay for it while they're at home. Somebody can run a courier service, pick it up, make it available elsewhere. So today, undisputed, about 2.3 million. It is on top of this that we are saying our leader is committing that in the next chapter, minimum 1 million youth in digital jobs extra. And that's going to come from the training program that we're going to roll out, about 250,000 people a year being trained in various forms of ICT skills and coding for the next layer of digitization. We're also saying, for example, that we want to introduce a number of interventions that will stimulate job creation. One is the SME bank. If you go through the manifesto, we make the point quite strongly that a lot of young people in the fintech industry, in the cosmetic industry, in the SME space are doing various things and require financing that is dedicated to small and medium scale enterprises. In fact, when His Excellency, the Vice President and the leader of our party engaged with many of them in the Youth Connect programs across the country, one of the things that they spoke about was the fact that I'm doing a little business here. I need a financial institution that understands me, that understands the little business I'm doing and can support me. And so one of the ideas that His Excellency has nominated, which we'll be implementing, is the SME Bank, which will be making funding available to small and medium-scale enterprises. We've also got the Women Trade and Entrepreneurship Fund, WOTEF, which is going to make funding available to the rural banks and the savings and loans companies, those who deal at the bottom with our women in the markets and a lot of people in informal trade. There are quite a number of ideas, including, for example, the increase in private sector opportunities by about 3% of GDP. That's about 30 billion Ghana cedis worth of economic opportunities that previously government was doing, which we now want to give to the private sector. That alone would ensure that you're going to have a lot of jobs in there. This is separate from about the 20,000 extra security persons that we are committing to recruit in this period, over 600 lawyers that we are hoping to recruit in the legal aid services, as well as the plethora of other jobs that are laid out here in the manifesto. So I want us to take jobs, very important to young people, and we have the detail out here on how we are doing it.
Okay, so with what you've created so far, 2.3 million, I'm asking that in the public sector, how much will we find in there? And in the private sector, how much?
I can fetch you that specific data here. I'm dealing with the headline numbers here. I can fetch you that data. But those are numbers that have not even been contested by even our opponents or anybody who is seeking to say that those jobs don't exist. The SNID database is one that is a matter of public record, and it's something that we can interrogate. Okay.
Today I saw a post by a colleague member of Parliament. He says, quote, "So for the records, we know that the Controlling Accountant General today confirmed before the Public Account Committee hearing in Parliament that the total number of public sector workers, both active and those on pension, on government or public sector payroll, do not exceed 760,000. Yet, this government says they have since 2017 created 2.3 million, 1.4 in the public sector. So the billion-dollar question is, where is the 1.4 million workers the government claims to have generated in the public sector? Roxanne Nelson Dafiano.
I'm very disappointed that he doesn't know that not all public sector workers are paid by the Controller and Accountant General. There are people who work, if you look at Ghana's public services, not all of them get paid by the Controller and Accountant General. There are those who get paid by other services in which they work. And I'm disappointed that this will be his records, that because the controller has said that he has a database of 760,000, it means that it cannot be possible that other public institutions have created jobs and have recruited people in that area. If you go to the Right to Information Commission, you should find out from them whether they are paid by the Controller and Accountant General. And then if you go to other institutions, you should find out from them. So these ones, I'm not too worried about them because they are obviously efforts at undermining the conversation that is ongoing about data. And that's why we've been specific where you find that data, SNIT. And SNIT can speak for itself.
Okay. So help people understand this. Not everybody is paid by the controller. Give us education on how these people are paid then so that we can track exactly how many people.
So when you take the public services of Ghana, there are those who are civil servants. People work in the Ghana Police Service. People work in the Immigration Service. People work in the Fire Service. People work in other public services. I'm saying to you that not all of them are paid by the Controller and Accountant General. When you go to the Ghana Revenue Authority, you should find out whether or not they are paid by the Controller and Accountant General. So I'm saying to you that if my colleague here says that because the Controller says that there are 760,000 people on his database, it means that it is not possible for 1.4 million jobs to exist in the public sector. And I'm saying that that is not a credible argument that he's making. Because there are many other public services that are not paid by the Controller and Accountant General.
Okay. Now, this WOTEF idea, fantastic. And you've explained that the target is not to give to the women directly, but you're going to give to rural banks, the microcredit companies for them to lend to the women. How different would that be from Maslock?
So the micro and small loans organization, Maslock, as was created, essentially is an institution on its own that receives applications for people who are looking for, may I say, loans, small loans, whether for transport or for trading, etc., and disburses to them and seeks to recover. And over the years, I think the story of how successful Maslock has been is one that is before all of us. We're saying that the need remains. In fact, the original conceptualization of Maslock was because the traditional banks don't necessarily have systems that are amenable for some of the people who work at the lowest ebbs in our economy. And so Maslock was created ostensibly to assist them. Over a period, it's become clear that Maslock is subject to its own difficulties. What our leader is saying is that when he sits and interacts with the women, they're not necessarily looking for a specialized institution to take care of them. They are saying that they do a lot of business with rural banks and savings and loans companies. In fact, they do a lot of business with what they call Susun operators as well. The problem has been, one, the credibility of some of these institutions at the bottom, and two, the availability of enough liquidity to assist them. When you go through the markets, when the leader of the party goes through the market shaking hands, one of the comments that a lot of market women make to him is that they would like some more liquidity to be made available in those institutions to offer them credit. Not all of them will have the 1 year, 2 year, 3 year savings record that you are looking for, but they want some liquidity in these institutions that they deal with, these rural banks, these savings and loans companies. So what has been announced as a policy proposition is that we will have a fund, which fund we will make available to these rural banks and these savings and loans companies so that they would have increased liquidity and use their very, may I say, simple and informal systems with which they deal with the women in the markets and at the trading hubs to be able to offer them credit. That is the thinking that has gone into the WOTEF. That is the thinking that will be the basis upon which that fund is built and introduced, God willing, from 2025 January when we get to power.
But in the market, we have men as well. We have men selling chaluete and all of you in the market.
Well,
right?
it is true, but at this point in time, the focus of this particular fund is to assist the majority who happen to be the women in our markets and marketplaces.
How different would this be from, okay, anyway, is it because the opposition party has said we're going to create a women's bank? That's why you're also bringing WOTEF, even though we have Maslock?
I suspect the opposition party is also interacting and engaging with people and finding out what is your challenge and how do we respond to it. Remember, we have said time and time again that this election is not about the slogans of the parties. This election is about who has the most feasible solutions to the challenges on the horizon. And that's why we say that our manifesto is themed on bold solutions for the future, bold solutions for jobs and businesses. So I suspect what has happened is that they're also engaging with the women. And when you engage with the women, they will tell you that our major challenge in the marketplaces includes having liquidity from the institutions that we deal with to fuel our business. They have elected that they will create an institution for women. I am not sure that our women say that when they go to these institutions, they are not served because they are women. The feedback they give us is that the major challenge they have is that of liquidity with the institutions that they already do business with. Because the higher level institutions have some requirements which they at the lower levels in trade don't necessarily align with. But the institutions that they align with don't have that much liquidity that they are looking for and the terms that they are looking for. So I suspect that they are trying to respond to it in their own way.
Okay.
By trying to introduce an institution, which they say if they're able to set up a bank for women, they think that bank will solve the problem for women. We're of the view that if you look at the licensing requirements of banks, prudential requirements of banks, and if you measure that against what the women really want and the ability to sustain this, we think that a better route is to use the existing institutions, the rural banks, the savings and loans companies, and to make liquidity available to them through this WOTEF. Okay. And that's why you find that our proposition, our solution to this is very different from what they are seeking to.
Will they come at an agreed fee they have to lend on to the women, or then they have to decide and do it within the system that they have?
First of all, the cost of funding is not zero. The time value of money is not zero. So you'd expect that when money is made available to these institutions, there will be a certain minimal charge. But what you should expect is that because it is not deposits that these institutions have gone to raise and promised a certain higher return on, it will obviously be cheaper than the deposits that they are raising. Those are issues of implementation, and I'm sure that when we get to that point, we can cross. But what the women in our markets across the country can be sure about is that through WOTEF, the rural banks and the savings and loans companies that you are already dealing with will get the liquidity you are asking for so that they can better support you in the markets.
Okay. Now let's look at, because these businesses will pay taxes.
Yes.
You are promising flat tax rate.
Yes.
We want to understand, what actually do you want to do? I've heard about Estonia, but exactly what it is.
The Estonian example is only one of the three levels of the flat tax system. One of the problems with taxation is when people can't find some clarity and predictability, and therefore people are doing a lot more tax evasion instead of even at best tax avoidance. And again, in our interaction with the business community, we find that the current taxation system has been made a bit more cumbersome because of the introductions that have been made to help us deal with the recent challenges that we have had. And so our leader is promising three things. Number one, import duties will be A, CD-based, and B, flat rate. So you have predictability. So if you're bringing in a container of spare parts, you know that a container of spare parts is going to require a duty of 50,000 cedis or 40,000 cedis. You know that ab initio. So that predictability is availed to you even before you ship your things. Today, the system is that it will come in at CIF, dollar value, and then they'll do the calculations on it. So sometimes you are not sure, and there's very limited predictability. And because our neighboring country, for example, Togo, based on the CFA franc, is not having that same fluctuation in their currency, it's predictable and it is lower at that point. We need to be competitive. And so what the leader of the NPP is saying is that we're going to make import duties CD-based and flat rate so that you have clarity. Number two, he's saying that if you look at the VAT spread currently, if you buy an item and they spread out the VAT for you, you are having a cascading effect. And in addition to that, you can no longer do the in and out, as in VAT input and VAT output deduction, as was traditionally available. And so what he's saying is that he's going to collapse all of that into a single flat levy. And then we'll make it input and output deductible so that it's simple and predictable for anybody who is involved in transactions that have to do with VAT. Before you come to number three on income tax like Estonia, if you go to Estonia today, they are not operating the progressive tax system like what we do in Ghana. So in Ghana, we say that your first 1,000 cedis may attract, let's say, X%. Yeah. The second 500 cedis will attract, X plus 2%. The third one will attract X plus 3% because it's progressive. In Estonia, what they do, and in a few other countries, what they do is that they say there's a flat rate. Your income tax is 15%. There's no corporate tax. Income tax is maybe 15%. So no matter what you are earning, you have clarity in doing your tax returns. That is 15%. If I earn 100,000 Ghana cedis, and I know that I'm going to pay 15,000 Ghana cedis as my income tax on it. Predictable. Yeah. If you, I mean, you are big money yourself, you are earning something big, then you have predictability in that tax computation.
Yeah.
Now, the argument we are making is that if we simplify this tax structure into a flat rate, it will help erase at least about half of the tax avoidance. Sorry, the tax evasion that we're having, not avoidance, the tax evasion that we're having. And we'll be able to broaden and bring some more people into the tax base. So if you ask about the flat rate, this is what we mean by it. It's across import duties, it's across VAT, and then income tax.
But let's start from the port. You're saying you will be in cedis. But how are we sure that you won't do the conversion from the dollar to say, okay, if the dollar is going to be, say, 100,000. You're only quoting it in cedis because that would make me feel that it's in cedis. But actually, you're doing the conversion from the dollar.
So the problem with making it dollar-based is that when the currency fluctuates, then your rates fluctuate. What we want to do is to make it cedi-based and predictable and flat. So by saying that a container of, let's say, spare parts is 50,000 cedis. It doesn't matter where the dollar has gone in the last 1 week or the last 2 months. You have clarity that is 50,000 cedis. And that's why it's cedi-based and it's flat and it's predictable for you. So we're not going to do, because currently what they are doing is that they are doing what you are talking about, where it is dollar referenced. And because it's dollar referenced, it fluctuates. That's what we are moving away from. Being able to give you a simple, basic cedi-based rate, flat, to say that you are bringing a container of pharmaceutical products. This is the flat rate for it. CD base, is it 30,000 cedis? Then you know, when you are ordering your items from wherever, from India or wherever, you know that this container is 30,000 cedis. The duties on it are a single levy in terms of, let's say, VAT has been collapsed into a single levy. And this is how I pay for it and get my things out. So it is not about the old model of having it dollar-based and quoting in cedis. If you do that, it will keep fluctuating. But
I'm sure you've done the modeling now.
Yes.
What influences what is going to influence that particular conclusion that you arrive at, that, okay, pay 50,000 on a container?
So today you have global benchmarks of products, which are being used for the CIF determination. And then you have all the duties that are slapped on it. And then in the end, you are given a figure in cedis. What our leader has said is that first, we are keeping an eye on what's happening in Togo. We don't intend our rates to be higher than what is in Togo. Two, we are going to give you a cedi-based rate that is equal or lower to Togo and is predictable over the horizon. So it is in comparing these various parameters that we're able to say, if we look at this item that you are bringing in, if you were in Togo, this is what you are going to bring in. Or in the old model, you'd have probably been paying 60,000 cedis, but that will fluctuate, 65, 78, 69, depending on which day you are bringing it in. We're no longer doing that. Togo is sitting at 50,000 cedis equivalent, or 40,000 cedis equivalent. We are pegging to that or lower, and we are saying that this container is 35,000 Ghana cedis because it's got with pharmaceutical products, or it's got with spare parts, or it's got with clothing, etc. in it. That is the model that we are seeking to introduce, and that is what will bring the predictability for you, the importer. So
you're telling the Ghanaian that no matter the beating the cedi receives from the dollar, you're not going to say, oh, today the dollar is, so let's change it. It's going to be stable.
We are even going further to tell Ghanaians that the beating that the cedi has been receiving from the dollar is due to a number of factors. And those factors as well in this manifesto, and if you followed the presentation of our leader, are being addressed. For example, one of the major contributors to our currency depreciation is demand for dollar that we don't have. There are multinational companies in Ghana today that have made profit in cedis, but want to repatriate dollars to their home countries. For some of them, if they make an order from the banks to supply dollar to that tune, our currency will start depreciating very soon, because the demand for the dollar is higher than the supply of the reserves that we have, or the portion of the reserves that we can make available on the market. So what our leader is saying is that already we have tested the gold purchase program. We have gone a second step to use it for the gold for oil program. Now, for those who need significant forex, we're going to use the same model to take their cedi, bypass the system by ensuring that there's gold available, because you purchase the gold in cedi, and using the gold to settle their forex demands on the external side. And so the traditional demand for Forex, which depreciates the cedi a lot more, he seeks to tackle it by moving the gold purchase, gold for oil, to the next level to back significant Forex demands. That's a significant, bold departure from the old model we have been operating, which has led to a lot of depreciation of our currency. Now, if you add that to a flat raised cedi-based import duty, you should expect some stability when it comes to things that at least cannot be manufactured here and are imported.
But we know the challenges that gold for oil also encountered.
What are those?
How are we sure that, in fact, if we do implement this, we'll have, first of all, enough gold? And if the person says, I need dollars, we're going to send the gold to where the dollar is supposed to be repatriated to pay for it, or what?
So, you know, Ghana has so much reserves of gold. I think it was mentioned yesterday during the Manifesto launch, about 5 billion ounces of gold estimated. When it comes to having enough gold to meet the gold purchase program, I think it's been demonstrated that the supply of gold has not been the problem. I think the only challenge, for example, has been in getting the local oil importing companies that are looking ordinarily to buy dollar to make available as much cedi equivalent to have purchased that gold, because there's enough gold on the market. In addition to that, he's also announced a program to expand the mining sector, a program to expand the mining sector in a responsible way and create an alternative mining avenue from the irresponsible and illegal mining. It's a 5-part program where government is doing the geological surveys, government is increasing the community mining schemes, government is supporting the community mining schemes with equipment, the gold catcher machine and other equipment. Government is also, in this manifesto, setting up the Minerals Development Bank so that they have financing. And then finally, a market to buy the small-scale produced gold that is traceable, i.e., if you are doing it from a well-established, legally established and practicing mine, then you would have your gold purchase. Remember, now we've just set up a refinery here in this program. So now let me connect the two together. Yeah. Is there enough gold? There's already enough gold. And the work that is ongoing will ensure that there is a lot more gold, even beyond what is being exported, to be purchased to back the currency. So when he talks about a gold-backed currency, this is the detailed explanation of how we're using cedis to purchase gold and satisfy some of our Forex needs and bypass the traditional demand for Forex, which, when pegged against our supply, distorts the market.
Okay. Now, so that would arrest the suffering the cedi goes through. And that's where we are saying that we are sure that we can then do the flat rate at the port and what have you. Now, the manifesto that you've launched includes a plan for a $2 billion facility to develop the Cape Coast Airport and another airport in the Upper East region. However, the whole airport has been idle for 6 years. The Western region already has an airport that could serve the Central region. I mean, people have said that moving from the Western to the Central region would take you like 40 minutes. With your V8, it could take you 40 minutes. I could do like an hour. So why the need? Now, is the proposal to develop a new airport in Cape Coast and the Upper East region realistic, considering the underutilization of the whole airport, for example, and the existing infrastructure? Is this a judicious use of resources?
There's a book I read quite recently on the economy of Ghana from the days of, Kwame Nkrumah. And some of these questions were being asked when Nkrumah was talking about the motorway and the Temahabo. Is it judicious use of resources? Is it feasible? Do we have enough traffic that requires us to build a whole motorway, go in there and to build a whole harbor out there? But today we credit Nkrumah that he was thinking ahead of his time to be able to invest in this infrastructure, which, as our population has grown, is benefiting from it. If we are assuming that people will just be traveling from Accra to Ho, and therefore, because nobody is traveling by air from Accra to Ho today, that airport is redundant, then what we are saying is that even the previous administration that built it didn't think well. I don't want to say so. I think that they were thinking about the fact that very soon as the Ghanaian economy expands, as the tourism potential in the Volta region expands, as the domestic airline industry expands, people will fly from Kumasi to Ho, that's not 10 minutes. People will fly from Tamale to Ho, that's not 10 minutes. People can fly from Sunyani to Ho, that's not 10 minutes. So for the same purpose, if somebody makes an argument that, oh, you can drive to Cape Coast just in about 1 hour and 45 minutes, or you can go to Takrady and drive to Cape Coast, he's assuming that everybody wants to use that route. The people who dream big and dream ahead and invest in infrastructure for the future, bear in mind the fact that what they are doing will not necessarily serve just today, but it will be architecture on which generations to come will be built.
Okay.
And that is why the first thing was to do what they call a feasibility study. Is it feasible? My understanding from the Transport Ministry is that the feasibility came out positive, that in the medium term there will be traffic on that route as the domestic aviation industry expands. And for that purpose, the 2 billion Korean facility that we have negotiated, we have the view that a part of it should go towards work on that airport.
Really?
Yes.
When is it starting?
I don't have dates in front of me. This is a manifesto. None of these commitments.
Well, no. I mean, because the airport was promised last, and you've told us that some work has been done.
I'm saying the feasibility says that, yes, it is a viable project. And therefore, what we have said is that the 2 billion Korean facility that we have negotiated, part of it should be extended towards the Cape Coast Airport project because it is feasible, because it is something that in the medium term will have traffic on it.
And I'm asking, because you said there's some funding of a sort, when do we intend to begin this?
And I'm saying that I'm not going to sit here and put timelines to any, not just this, any of the commitments that we have made here. Today, we are in the process of telling you our policy prescriptions for the next 4 years, for the social contract from 2025 to 2028. There are none of these that I'm giving you timelines that we're going to do this by this time or we're going to do it. It is a 4-year mandate. When the administration is formed, the cabinet is in place, whoever is transport minister and his team, put out the work plan, tapping into the resources that have been secured. They will answer this question. But the leader of the party who seeks to lead the country in this dispensation says that this is one of the priorities to which I will put this Korean facility.
Now, people of Cape Coast are watching.
Yes.
And they doubt this promise. We spoke to some of them. So if indeed there's funding of a sort and work is going to begin, of course, it will be right to tell them when that work is going to start.
I remember when some landing beaches were promised and people doubted. And today, when you go to those places, you see landing beaches that have been constructed. I remember when some promises were made in the area of digitization and people doubted. Some mocked, some joked and called our leader names. And today, they are some of the beneficiaries of it. What I can say to you in comfort and in confidence is that the feasibility has been reported to us as positive. Our leader has made the point that the Korean facility that has been secured will be partly to put to this use. And I'd like you to assure our colleagues in Cape Coast, myself, I'm here giving them that assurance that this is the commitment of our leader. There's one way you can find out. Give him the opportunity.
Will the money be sitting there?
Which money is this?
The 2 billion?
Well, this is a facility that you have negotiated, and you're saying that that facility will be put to this and other uses. So you draw down on the facility and you use it for this purpose.
When is the facility supposed to be drawn down?
Well, today the broad framework is what has been agreed upon. As they go through the process, they will put out timelines for drawdown. But in the 4 years ahead of us, the leader has committed that part of that facility will be channeled into this project. As I've said, I'm not going to sit here and put timelines to it.
Okay. Now, in 2020, you said you're going to construct the Pwalugu Dam. And 2024, I read that you say you're going to implement the Pwalugu irrigation scheme. What's the difference?
No. You should go on to the full sentence. The difference is at the end of the sentence.
Okay, let me...
If you go to the actual manifesto, he makes the point that we are going to tap into private sector funding to complete the Pwalugu irrigation project. Now, the project and its concepts are quite clear. The challenge that has been occasioned has been in funding it. If you look through this manifesto, one of the major promises that he has made is that he's going to shift about 3% of GDP from the government budget to PPP arrangements. Why? Because government budgets depend on revenue mobilization and very limited funding. And in a year that, for example, your currency depreciates and you can no longer, let's say, your currency depreciates, your debt stock increases, the ratings agencies say you are in a risk of high distress and therefore you can't access the markets. It doesn't matter what you have programmed to do with financing, you won't get the financing anymore. What he's saying is that we have to change from this model and then bring in the private sector financing to execute it. So as he makes this commitment in the 2024 budget, he makes a distinguishing feature that this time around we're going to rely on private resource crowding to be able to execute that. That is the difference between 2020 and 2024. Remember, in this manifesto, as we talk of expanding PPPs, we acknowledge that the government fiscal framework is limited. If you come to us at housing, many of the things that we are doing today, the financing is not coming from the taxpayers' money. Okay. So, for example, the amount of money we need to complete Saglem, they're almost 100 million. We're not taking taxpayers' money because the old model will require you to wait for finance minister to give you 100 million. And if he hasn't given you 100 million, the project is sitting there. So today what we are doing is that we are bringing in private capital. So tapping into private capital to complete Saglem. It is the same thing that the leader of our party is saying here, that we are going to operationalize the Poalogo irrigation dam project, but tapping into private financing. That is the difference that you find. So it's not a difference in the project, it's a difference in the financing structure.
If I'm a private person, I put more money in Poalogo. What is the structure that will help me recoup my funding? So
for PPPs, first of all, we had a PPP policy. I'm glad you've asked this question. We had a PPP policy. And then I think in 2020, we passed the PPP Act. What the PPP Act does is that it spells out the framework that allows you, a private person, to come in and do a project in partnership with government and take out your money. So you look at what they call, first you do the concept note, then you do the feasibility. And the feasibility includes the economic viability of that particular project. Once economic viability is determined, you have clarity that, okay, I need to sink in maybe about $200 million into this project. But this project has the economic potential of maybe an annual $40 million. And then you can then arrange with government that, okay, so I'm sinking in my $200 million, and I'm going to take out maybe $30 million a year. Government, you can have 10 of the 40. And then over maybe a 10-year period, I make $300 million. That's my 200 plus 100 to pay for cost of financing and profit. And government also makes some revenue off it. If you look at some of the expansion works that have been done in our ports, it was done through PPP arrangements. And it is the same model that we are now looking to mainstream and expand. And that's what the Vice President is speaking about in this particular promise.
Okay. So the dam is different from the scheme or what?
The dam is infrastructure to yield certain purposes. I'm sure you even recall the phrase multi-purpose dam. One of the purposes is irrigation. And what he's talking about here, so there's a power component to it, there's an irrigation component to it. What he's talking about here is ensuring that the project is completed using private financing instead of the original conceptualization of using funds from the treasury to finish it. I don't think the focus is on which of the uses he mentioned, whether it's irrigation or power or something. It's a project conceptualization that he's referring to.
What about the classroom and the health infrastructure, private?
So when we did the modeling, we came to the view that about 3% of GDP can be taken off the budget, including infrastructure projects like Poalogo, etc., that we're talking about. Today, if you drive on the Western Corridor, we are building a new road network to Cape Coast and Takrady. If you go on the Eastern Corridor, you'll find new roads to the Volta region. On the Northern Corridor, you'll find the Achimota and Sawam Expressway being expanded. They've started tarring parts of it already. All of that is literally sitting on the budget. We have learned lessons from Kenya, from US, from other places where private resources can be used to do this on concession basis. And then the private entities that built it are regulated to get a payback over a period. So in Kenya, for example, they've built a new expressway from Jomo Kenyatta International Airport right to the heart of Nairobi in PPP with some of the Chinese firms.
That looks simple to do.
No.
But when it comes to health and classrooms.
I'll come there. So it has been done and they toll it and they collect their money. So in the PPP framework, there are ones that you build and you take your money from the market. There are also those that you build and the government pays over a period. So take buses for senior high schools. Literally almost every 4 years, we are buying close to about 700 buses for senior high schools, pickups for senior high schools. So in education and health, you will find that there's expenditure like this. What the leader of the party is saying, and God willing, the president from 2025 is saying is that we will invite the private sector to buy and lease out these vehicles to us. In health services, there are machines for diagnostics and scanning, etc., that cost an arm and a leg. And if you ask the Ghana Health Service to buy all of those machines to equip all of these hospitals at the same time, they'll struggle because there's limited revenue. But there are private sector organizations that are saying that they are willing. Just last week, I was speaking to somebody who had brought in 30 dialysis machines with financing from a bank for his private institution. Private people are willing to provide machinery for health service so that health insurance can pay over a period and they can recoup their money and make their profit. So what Dr. Bawumia is saying, that the old thinking of burdening the government budget with everything, which leads to frustrations and constraints for everybody, we need to shift to this new paradigm where you bring in the private sector to take up 30 billion Ghana cedis in today's estimates of opportunity.
But with what we explained,
so
there's a likelihood of the service, the cost of service being higher.
So that's why I mentioned that you regulate them. So today, under today's PPP arrangement that we do today, you don't leave the private person to set his own charges. When you go to PIAD at the finance ministry, they will sit with you. And then they will do, first of all, the cost of the project, the cost of the financing, and then the margins that are allowable. They will work it all out with you before they give you what they call the seal of approval for you to proceed with the project.
Now, in your manifesto, you say protect Ghanaian cultural and family values.
Yes.
I mean, does this mean that Dr. Bawumia supports and will therefore sign the what we call the promotion of human sexual rights and family values?
But he has said that openly, that he is anti-LGBT, and he's not going to support any conversation or argument that says that we should normalize or legalize LGBT things in this country. He won't support that.
So will he sign the bill?
No, I'm coming. It's a matter of public record. His position is known. The bill is a matter of litigation in courts now as to whether or not that bill went through the right legal processes before it was passed. It's been litigated. I'm not going to make a pronouncement on the legality of that bill, but he has said clearly that he will protect Ghanaian family and cultural values. He does not support all these LGBT things that some people are trying to promote. He's totally against it. It doesn't align with his culture or his religion. He's against it. If a bill properly constructed has gone through the processes and is legally laid before him, unless there's something fatally wrong with the bill, I don't see why.
But this bill went through the right processes. You were in Parliament.
No, that is why it is being contested. There was a decision that had to be made by the Speaker whether or not that bill will impose a charge on the public purse. Those who have sued are arguing, among other things, that that determination was not made by the Speaker, and therefore the Speaker could not have admitted it properly so-called as a private member's bill for it to be passed. That is one of the fatalities they are complaining about. I'm not a member of this.
But does it matter if it is going to protect our human, our cultural values?
You are suggesting that if you steal to take care of your wife and children, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
It matters.
Okay. All right. Okay. So Dr. Bawumia will sign it if it's properly so constituted.
I believe so.
That's what you're saying. You believe so?
I believe so.
But also there's argument that why doesn't he convince his boss that, look, I believe in our cultural values. You also do. So why not let this go?
But if that bill is tainted with unconstitutionality or illegality, you can't suggest to the president to participate in an illegal or unconstitutional act. You do know that if a president participates in an unconstitutional act, it's grounds for him to be removed from office. So let the Supreme Court make its determination and the subsequent steps will follow. But for Dr. Bawumia and our campaign, we are clear. It's not something that he's interested in. And that's why he's been bold enough to put it in the manifesto.
There's a lot for us to talk about, but
maybe you should invite me.
Yeah, exactly. You have to come again. You have to come again. Well, thank you so much for being with us wherever you are. I'm sure that this debate, this discussion will continue wherever you'll be. Let's keep this going so that this 2024 election will be fought on ideas and ideas only. My name is Samuel Kojo Braze, and it's been an honor to come your way with PM Express. Meet again, God willing, some other time. But log on to myjournalline.com for more. Good evening.